Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Trevor Petrucci, and I'm the founder and CEO of a transformative platform that allows all team members of a sports organization to communicate, collaborate, and connect with each other and their athletes. Sculpt. Our platform is not just a tool, but an essential way for sports teams to be successful. So raise your hand if you're familiar with this team right here. Well, if you are, this is the Clemson Tigers football team when they won the national championship back in 2017, when actually I was working a part of their sports nutrition department. And a question that always came to my mind is what made them so successful? You get so many different answers, whether it was how many wins they had or how many injuries they had that year. But I really began to figure out that there's many other reasons for what made them successful on and off the field. And what I realized that it wasn't just about their talent, that it was really about how well every part of the teams behind the scenes was working together, from the coaches, from the strength conditioning coaches, to dietitians, and even the coaching staff. When every department is more integrated and aligned, it allows them to work more smoothly and effectively with each other. But unfortunately, this is not a reality for a lot of organizations out there, from high schools to even all the way to the professional teams, and we've been able to realize and figure out 4 main reasons and problems for this. First reason is that most organizations are simply just overwhelmed by the jumble of solutions that are simply incompatible with each other, right? So some departments may be using their own solutions or multiple solutions, and it can be really hard to actually be aligned of what their goals are and decisions they're making for their organization, but also for their athletes they work with. Also, is just the lack of ability to safely store and securely handle sensitive athlete data, right? So sports teams are collecting so much data from their athletes and really have a difficult time being able to store it securely. Most platforms can really put organizations, expose them to non-compliance with HIPAA guidelines because they're not able to delegate and determine who has access to that information. And also, most platforms just simply overlook the athlete's experience, right? It's at the end of the day, it's the athletes that matter. And whenever there's not able, when they're using their own, they're using multiple platforms, comes them having to use multiple apps, and just they want feedback, right? With all the data they're collecting, athletes want to know how they can improve and also just how they're progressing throughout their whole athletic career. And also, just lastly, is that sports teams and sports organizations are always on the move, right? They're traveling, they're out of the weight room, they're out of the office, and just technology just doesn't give them the ability to adapt, to collect, to manage data wherever they go. So as a result, this leads to wasted time, money, and resources. And in the high-stakes world of sports, every cent, every dollar, every single thing that they contribute to really matters to their ultimate goal of winning and getting their athletes better. So our team, from various experts of myself who works in this industry as a sports dietitian and strength conditioning coach and other experts who have been athletes themselves, we're trying to create a new experience for sports teams. So welcome to Sculpt, where we really redefined athlete management for sports organizations. So we provide a more tailored, secure, and streamlined way for all team members to communicate, collaborate, and connect with each other in real time and with their athletes. And we do this through 4 main areas. So instead of having a unified platform, we essentially just have department-specific hubs that are all tailored for each team role's needs. And then through those hubs, it allows them to share information of their athletes to really see the whole picture of the athlete. And in terms of meeting compliance standards, we actually have built-in user permissions where departments can determine and delegate what information they want to share with each other. And at the end of the day, we just want to drive and give the ability to support staff to give more feedback to the athletes. So a little bit more visual, so each department has their own web-based application that is all interconnected with each other with their own features built in. So it's really specific to their needs. So for example, sports medicine staff, they're tracking injuries, they're looking at their rehab, they're looking at treatments. But also for sport coaches, they're looking at travel logistics. But the most important thing is that the value is that everything is in one place at one time and they can connect with each other. So honestly, we've been really getting a lot of feedback from just the sports community already, with extensively over 400 plus survey responses of really identifying pain points, how this can be a valuable product, but also almost 120 plus stakeholders who are interested in pilot testing, really seeing that people are looking for a new effective way for managing not only operations as a team, but also with their athletes. So actually, starting tomorrow, it's actually a cool announcement. We're actually pilot testing our alpha stage of our sports nutrition hub with 30+ dietitians from various organizations, from military bases, from universities, D1, D2, D3, and even professional teams in the soccer and football space. So how are we going to make money, right? We always love to ask that question. Well, essentially, we use a tier-based subscription model that allows based on the needs and size of the organization. So if they're handling and managing 50 to 500 athletes, or they have a few departments, or they have 5 to 10 support staff, we provide a plan that really meets their needs and fits well for them. So where we're headed is we're building out additional hubs, because we see a lot of value in just our really identifying our target market that is a large amount of it, with building out these additional hubs and then really trying to publicly launch in Q1 of 2025. So our ask, we're looking for more HIPAA compliant experts because it's something we want to have a more robust built out platform and infrastructure for us, and just any connections with schools and just onboarding more developers. As I just said, athlete management world is very fragmented and complex, where we're trying to really move forward and handle this challenge in a more comprehensive way for sports teams to operate and connect with each other. Thank you.
Hold it down.
What?
Turn it on.
Oh, turn it on.
Hold it down. Press hold.
There you go. Expert over here. Thank you. Trevor, good job. Couple questions, because I do a lot on this space. It's very crowded. So you showed that slide of, and I can, like 3 companies that came up to mind just sitting here. TeamSnap, Real Response was here in Charlotte. Side note, I'm an investor in there, so maybe I'm a little biased. But Catapult is another one.
Yeah.
How are you going to go to these universities and differentiate yourself?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So a lot of schools are using a lot of hardware for collecting data. So we can actually take those things. So for example, strength conditioning coach, they're using Catapult for determining and assessing and even changing some maybe training prescriptions. So for strength conditioning, we would use that as an integration. So for any hardware they may be using, that's what strength coaches want. They want to be able to have it in a centralized place from whatever hardware they may be using. It can be anything that they're using, but in a centralized place. We're just trying to really reinvent the kind of a change and differentiate ourselves and saying that, hey, you don't have to use, from sports medicine staff, using your own solution or centralized like EMR or something along the lines. We're trying to make it all more comprehensive with each other.
Yeah, I would probably have a slide that has all the different technologies that maybe UNC Charlotte or whoever's using, and where you fit in that model and why you're differentiated.
Okay.
The other thing you mentioned about sharing information, I do think it's going to become, athletes are going to become more aware of, I don't want my information shared.
Correct.
And you talked about, well, now we're going to share it between departments and places like that. That sharing of information could be the difference between a person getting $1 million and nothing. So if they had a pulled hamstring or a tweaked knee, I don't want anyone to know about that. I had a friend that got drafted in NFL. He had a torn rotator cuff. He never told anyone until after he got drafted, and then he got the surgery. So stuff like that, they don't want people to know.
For sure.
So I think you need to talk about, you talked about how we're going to help with the sharing information, but how does that work?
Yeah, so kind of in an onboarding process, essentially it just give the ability to the athletes to provide or give consent to data being collected. So we really want to, because oftentimes, like you said, organizations just collecting data without even really caring for the athletes and what they want to say and data that's being collected. So really trying to hone in that anything that's being shared can be under the consent and being, agreed upon by the athlete themselves, because we really want to take even the athletes providing more discussion and making decision-making in those things as well. So kind of the way we built it in is where they are able to provide consent or even agree to that information being shared with other departments.
Yeah. Ironically, I have the same amount of experience here. I would just try to position yourself and give a little bit more of a value proposition in your slides, really helping us to understand your positioning. I wasn't sure if you were taking everybody and aggregating them, or I wanted a little bit more of what you do. So maybe if you could speak a little bit more to that. And I know you have a pilot coming, so it'll be really interesting to see maybe a case study or, you know, showing that. So that's going to be really key, I think, to pushing you over the edge, especially as you move forward, because there's, I think, a lot of value in the data. I do think the sharing part, it's a sticky point. So consent and saying, you know, they buy in up front, you may want to think about successive levels of consent or opting in and out at various checkpoints throughout your program, because as I get closer to pro, I may start to go, okay, you know, I want to be a little more protective, or if I signed an NIL deal, I might really want to pull back because now I have a brand that I really want to protect. So you may just want to layer in a few more levels of consent if you want to protect the athlete. And then I'm assuming this is really geared towards universities, not the athlete.
Correct, yes. Primarily because, you know, with most of the organizations, you know, we'd have to go to, you know, they have procurement departments as well. So it's kind of they have very long sales cycles because they have to go through, you know, they have budget constraints and then they have to propose if they want to purchase this or something along the line. So we'd be selling to the organizations and like the athletic directors who make those decisions.
Gotcha. And then I just have to ask, as a normie who's lifting weights a lot of times, but used to be on the athlete side of things in college, is this something that, you know, maybe someone who is still actively working out might be able to use or leverage in a different marketplace? Do you see this being applicable somewhere else?
Absolutely. I definitely think it can be even in the private sector or like any local gyms who are having with different coaches, because the nice thing is that not everyone has to buy every hub or because they don't have every department. So for example, you know, we're even in the sector of like a sports dietitian who works by themselves, who doesn't work it even in the sports world, but she's using it because it gives her those, you know, different features and functionalities that she does as a dietitian and provides it in one centralized place. So it really gives us the ability to be able to kind of touch point into different markets, but definitely something we can definitely do. Yeah.
Yep. I think the only thing I would do is expand on your Clemson analogy and like, what did you see? Like, you saw the success of Clemson, but what was missing when you saw it? Like, Trevor wasn't doing this, or we weren't seeing this. The other thing with athletes that I've found is they will lie about their sleep patterns because they don't want you to know that they were out having a rager the night before. Brent, you can probably, you know, Brent's an athlete back there. You can probably talk about that. But no, I think the key thing, it sounds like you've got a lot of great connections through your history with Clemson and others, so you can get in the door. But there is thousands of applications around this, and so it's going to be key of like, where do we fit in this process, and the value we can do on that, because you're going to run into Team Snap at one point, and they're going to say we do everything. So it's kind of like when I had a transportation management software company, and we ran against SAP and Oracle, and they said, well, we do transportation management, but they did it this deep, right? So you're going to have all these competitors saying they do what you're doing, but it's not really what you're doing. So. Are you raising money right now? I didn't see that.
We are, yeah. We just primarily been doing through Safe Notes, really just trying to look at finding different options. You know, that's something we're definitely interested in.
Yeah, on the raise, and it was on your slides too. If you're going after angel investors, my opinion, I would start, I know it's not as pretty, but at 25,000, because I feel like 50,000, if you want earlier stage investors that are new to the game, they may do 50 and they might go upstream. But if you can come down to 25, it's more of a like, all right, I'll do it, and if you lose my money, I'm not happy, but it's okay. So the further you come down, the better on that front. And that was on your slide as well. And yeah, no, it's an exciting space. And the cool thing is, when you said Norm, by the way, I thought you meant Norm the Niner. You meant I don't know.
Normal people.
Normal people. All right. Well, I like the Norm the Niner. So. But it's a great space, and there's a lot of stuff happening at UNC Charlotte around technology. So I would definitely connect with them if you have. It seems like you have, because they have the U.S. Olympic stuff happening up there now too, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Good job.